What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the TheSlamDuncan YouTube channel. Today, I want to bring up an idea that I've been kind of reading about a little bit, and that is, can the Bulls go out and acquire EuroLeague MVP Vasilije Micic? Hope I'm saying that correctly. I'm just going to call him Micic for the rest of the video. Who's a 6'5" point guard, but currently his rights are stuck with OKC. And because OKC is about to, going through the rebuild, and Micic is 28, it looks like Micic wants to come over to the NBA, but he doesn't want to go to OKC Thunder team, which is rebuilding, right? So is it possible for this Bulls team to go out and acquire him from the Oklahoma City Thunder? But before we get into it all, make sure you hit that like button if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Let's talk about Micic here, and kind of talk about how the Bulls, one, can go out and get him, but two, his fit for the team. With Lonzo Ball's, news coming out with his injury, I don't know about you guys, but I am severely concerned about Lonzo, and not just for this upcoming season, but for the rest of Lonzo's time as a Bull. I think it isn't out of the possibility that this Bulls front office is actually starting to think about ways to, one, help this team while Lonzo is out, but two, start thinking about the future without Lonzo. I'm not saying, trade him now. I'm not like, you do not trade Lonzo now. There's no reason to trade Lonzo now. But if Lonzo can't get healthy this season that's coming up here, we're looking at $20 million that is basically down the drain every single season if he can't stay healthy. Which is why it's important for this Bulls team to start looking at the PG position and how they can address it for the future. One guy that I'm very high on is Ayo Dosunmu, as we all kind of saw last season. I made a video on Ayo Dosunmu about his future with the Bulls and how the Bulls can re-sign him once he becomes a restricted free agent in 2023. You can check out that video up in the cards or in the link in the description, as I do think Ayo could definitely be the point guard of the future for this Bulls team if Lonzo can't get healthy, which I'm praying that Lonzo can get healthy. But another guy that I think the Bulls should be looking at for who can help now, but potentially be the starting point guard of the future, is Micic here. Micic is 28. He was just the EuroLeague MVP. But the fact that Woj is tweeting about this kind of tells me that Micic is actually looking to come over to the NBA. He wanted to actually come over last season. The Bulls were actually interested in him last season. You can find an article written by Rob Schaefer about that. On that. But he then re-signed with his current team, which is a Turkey team in the EuroLeague. And so the Bulls obviously then, decide not to go after him. But now it's been reported that Micic still wants to come over to the NBA, and obviously doesn't want to go to a rebuilding situation because he's 28. The other thing about this that's interesting is that I can't find the contract details with his new contract that he just signed. Obviously, he's gotten permission to go out and seek an NBA contract, but from what I've seen, it's about 3 years and $3 million. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not putting this up on the screen, but I think that's his contract. Again, not 100% sure here. But either way, to get Micic, it's going to require more than the minimum contract in the NBA to get him from the EuroLeague. So Micic is looking to go to a team that is not in a rebuilding situation, that is in his choice would be contending, but can also pay him a significant amount of money. And you look at the teams that have that available for Micic, I think the Bulls kind of fit perfectly, and I'll explain why. First off, let's look at this here. This is an article written by Stephen No, and this is a guy that I look up to a lot when it comes to NBA writing. But he basically brought up he basically wrote an article on Micic, but he talked about how Jake Fisher has reported that the Bulls, Nuggets, and Bucks are interested in Micic. So obviously the Bulls are still interested in Micic here. But what's the holdup? One, the Thunder still have his rights, but two, you see here, this sentence here, this late in the free agency, those teams don't have the salary exceptions that would be required to add him for the contract that he would be seeking. Now, I don't know what he's seeking specifically, but obviously it's more than the minimum contract in the NBA. And obviously a lot of these contending teams, they've already spent their money. So there isn't really a lot of teams out there that is looking to win that actually have money available to them. The only teams that have cap space currently are the San Antonio Spurs, Indiana Pacers. Both are rebuilding teams. But then, No writes this: the Pelicans could potentially be an option, as they can still offer part of their taxpayer mid-level exception. But I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. The taxpayer mid-level exception is this much money. It's $6.5 million. If you look at the Bulls contract situation, they still have $7.3 million left with their mid-level exception because they use 3.2 on Andre Drummond. This is more money than the Pelicans can offer. And I think the Bulls should absolutely be looking to offer this to Micic because I think they're honestly the only team that has the money that can actually go out and get him. So it's just interesting to see this be written here, but then also say that these teams don't have the salary exceptions to get him. Because, yeah, the Bucks don't have the salary exceptions because they use their mid-level exception. I think the Nuggets also use their mid-level exception with Bruce Brown. So the only team that is looking to win that has the money to get Micic is the Bulls, in my opinion. And I could be completely wrong, but that's just what I'm going off of what I've seen. I think the Bulls really are the only team that kind of fits what Micic is looking for. So how do the Bulls go and get Micic? And this is kind of this article is kind of what inspired this video for me, which is an article written by Heavy, which interesting website. I'll just say that they kind of have some clickbaity stuff here, but obviously because of the Lonzo Ball stuff that's been coming out, Bulls might be looking to get a point guard, and maybe they don't trust Addison or they don't trust Alex Caruso to run the PG position. So they wrote about this, and then Mark Shanowski actually tweeted out that maybe that Micic could be the option for the Bulls. And obviously Mark Shanowski works for the Windy City Bulls and used to work for NBC Sports Chicago. So a trade for Micic would obviously require Kobe White. I think that's kind of like the obvious here, as a lot of Bulls fans want Kobe White traded, and I get it. But the interesting thing is this. I personally don't like the idea of just straight up trading Kobe White for Micic. I think we're kind of overpaying a little bit, especially to a rebuilding team like the Thunder. But if that's what if the Bulls end up doing, I'd be totally okay with it. Still a little irked because I do think it's a little overpay, but if that's what they want to do, I'm okay with it. But here is the trade that they threw out here, which I think actually makes a lot more sense, and I think this really works out for both sides. The deal would be sending Kobe White for JaMychal Green, who's on the Thunder because he got traded there, and for Micic. And I like that a lot. One, this addresses the power forward position for the Bulls. JaMychal Green's a three-point shooter, a bigger body, he's 6'8". He's not the greatest defender, but he definitely fills what this Bulls team needs at the power forward position, which is just more size, and he still brings a three-point shot along with him. So he is a perfect guy to be like a backup power forward for this Bulls team. And obviously we get Micic, and the Thunder are looking to offload Micic for some value, and in this case, it would be for Kobe White. This article said that, the rights to Devon Dotson would be included in this. I don't know where this came from. The Bulls do not have the rights to Devon Dotson unless I'm stupid. But this is not something that is going to be involved in this trade at all. So I don't know where this came from this article. So this is just weird in my opinion. But when we look at this, when it comes to this sort of trade, Kobe White's making $7.4 million, and then JaMychal Green is making 8.2. So you swap those two contracts, it works out perfectly. Contracts match, don't have to worry about it. And I think honestly that's a pretty good swap right off the bat. Now here comes the other problem. Here comes a problem, which is the Bulls already have 15 guys on their roster. Now in the offseason you're allowed to have 20. So you can still, go out and acquire these guys and not have to worry about it. But doing a Kobe White for Micic and JaMychal Green trade, obviously then the Bulls would have 16 guys, which means someone has to get waived. But I wouldn't be shocked if this sort of trade started to actually come to fruition, that the Bulls would actually throw in Tony Bradley here. And the reason being is that Tony Bradley's 25, so he's still relatively young. Obviously his contract is very, very small at $2 million. But if you look at this Thunder team, they don't really have a center. I know Derek Favors is here, but I don't know how much he's going to play. I think he's probably going to get traded. Obviously, Chet Holmgren's here, but I see him as more of a power forward to start his career. But after that, there is really no big man on this roster. So maybe the Thunder are looking to get, take on Tony Bradley as kind of like a flyer. He's still relatively young. Maybe develop him a little bit more. And you still get a little bit more back for Micic and JaMychal Green. So I think if you're able to do that, swap those two players, 2 for 2, the Bulls don't have a roster issue at that point, which I think is definitely best case scenario. So I would look for Kobe White, Tony Bradley for JaMychal Green and Micic trade. I think that's something that can actually happen here. Obviously, I think the league's kind of on hold right now because of the whole KD situation, also the Donovan Mitchell situation. So the Thunder could definitely be a team that could get involved with those two trades. So maybe this doesn't happen now, but I think if Micic really wants to come over to the NBA, I think the Bulls are definitely in a good position to get him, and I think if he fits, or this Bulls team fits exactly what he wants when he comes over to the NBA. Here's the only caveat in this whole idea, and this is the problem, which makes me very, very hesitant to say that this is even a possibility. Obviously, swapping Kobe White for JaMychal Green, contracts worked. We don't have to worry about that, but the big thing is that we stay under the tax line. If we get to JaMychal Green, we still be $900K below the tax. Obviously, if we sign Micic with that rest of the mid-level exception, which is $7 million, we then be into the tax. And not only that, we basically be at the tax apron. We can't go past the tax apron because if we use a mid-level exception, you're hard capped at the tax apron. So that's where the Bulls would be stuck at. That's where I don't think, this is the reason why I'm hesitant to say that this trade could happen. So maybe a Kobe White for Micic trade, just swap, straight up. You sign Micic to the rest of that $7 million in mid-level exception, the Bulls stay below the tax. But then you don't get JaMychal Green. So that's the kind of the problem with this whole idea here. And I would love the Bulls to go into the tax. I think it's absolutely worth it. But it seems like this Bulls team, for whatever reason, I'm going to guess it's Jerry Reinsdorf, wants to be below the tax for this season, which bothers me a lot, because if you can get a guy like Micic, I think it's worth it. I definitely see him helping this Bulls team, whether he is starting or coming off the bench. I think he fits well alongside Alex Caruso and Ayo Dosunmu. And I think he can easily fit into this team with this Bulls team. I think him alongside DeMar DeRozan would be perfect. But unfortunately, the tax is a thing that it looks like the Risers want to avoid, and that really, really bothers me. So maybe the Bulls surprise us, and they're like, nope, we're going into the tax. We just had to wait a little longer to get Micic to come on over and figure things out with the Thunder. I'd be all for that. But I don't know if that's really the case right now, and that's kind of the only caveat that I'm seeing with this sort of idea. So that's kind of all I have for the idea of a trade. I'll end this video by talking about Micic himself and kind of the player he is. Obviously, he's 6'5" PG, just won the EuroLeague MVP. But I think he also knows that if he's going to come over to the NBA, he's going to have a lesser role. I think last season he was looking to be a starting PG for a team. I think he understands that's just not possible, especially if he wants to come over to the NBA now, as he's about to be age 29. This might be his last chance. So for him to come over to the NBA, he's going to take a lesser role and also not that much money. So again, the $7 million per year I'm looking at. But, Micic, he's a very good three-point shooter. I think people are kind of like, well, can he catch and shoot? In my opinion, he can, for what I've seen. He is a very good scorer. He can score really well inside in the paint. He's very comfortable shooting off the dribble. He's a really good passer, especially in the pick and roll situations. 5 assists to about 2.5 turnovers, which is pretty good. But I think a lot of people are suspect about his defense. I actually think his individual defense, for what I've seen, again, very little video on him. It's actually okay, his individual defense, but when it comes to being in rotation, that's kind of where things get a little sketchy with him. But again, I don't see him having that big of a role with this Bulls team if he does come on over, because if I'm going to just assume that Lonzo is out, I have Ayo Dosunmu starting because you want more defense in the starting lineup, but I then see Micic, Dragic, and Caruso come off the bench, but you'd see Micic mostly play with Dosunmu and Caruso to kind of, level out his lack of defense. And I think that's just honestly perfect, because this Bulls team needs three-point shooting, and I can tell you right now, Micic can provide that three-point shooting. You're worried about catch and shoot with this dude? Well, just look at this right here. He is fundamentally sound when it comes to the catch and shoot situations. I think it's something that the Bulls should absolutely target. I know a lot of people want the two-way player with the catch and or like a three-point shooter and a defender. It's hard to get that in the NBA, man, especially like a very good three-point shooter to also be a very solid defender. That's the reason why Mikal Bridges got paid $90 million, right? So this Bulls team desperately needs three-point shooting. They struck out on Gallinari. Well, I think Micic can definitely be an option for them as a guy that can come off the bench, play about 20 minutes per game, and be help if Lonzo isn't there. But even if Lonzo is back, I still see him having a role with this team. Unfortunately, Goran Dragic will be then pushed to the bench. but I still see him having a pretty significant role with this team with Lonzo Ball here, or if Lonzo's not here, I see him having an even bigger role with this team. So that's all I have for you guys in this video on Micic. Go ahead and leave in the comments your thoughts on potentially the Bulls trying to acquire Micic, or the idea of Micic on the Chicago Bulls team. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.